Welcome to the Semi-Interesting Podcast, where we explore some of the unique legal issues in the global semiconductor industry. My name is Nathaniel. I'm an IP attorney at the law firm of Hodgson Russ, and one of your hosts.
Hi, I'm one of your hosts, Elizabeth Morris, Senior Director of IP and Product at Everpure Incorporated. In my role, I manage the patent portfolio at Everpure. Let's go ahead and dive right in.
It will come as no surprise that encouraging invention disclosures at your company can increase intellectual property protection in the long run. More disclosures means more ideas can be protected. More protection or more patent applications means you are better able to stop competitors. And small procedural tweaks will slowly change your company culture to keep IP at the forefront. We've covered this in some past episodes, but there is another aspect to this process. Including different backgrounds and perspectives on your team can help companies achieve the next big breakthrough. As the semiconductor industry develops advances that will impact every corner of our daily lives, it will need new scientists, engineers, and technicians. And that's where our guests come in. We're joined on this episode by Ruthe Farmer and Aburva Gs to discuss entering the semiconductor field and how investments in students can protect intellectual property leadership in the United States. Ruthe, Aburva, thanks for joining. Would you please introduce yourselves to our listeners?
Sure. Great to see you, and happy to be talking about this topic. I'm Ruthe Farmer. I'm founder and CEO of the Last Mile Education Fund, which is the only nationwide safety net fund investing in degree completion for students in high-demand STEM fields. So semiconductors are near and dear to our hearts, and we recently launched the Semiconductor Pathways Fund in partnership with 5 semiconductor companies: Applied Materials, KLA, Lam Research, Cadence, and AMD.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the intro, Nathaniel. Super happy to be here. I am Aburva Gs. I work as a program manager at Everpure, which is a storage and data management company. And previously, I used to work at a semiconductors equipment manufacturing company. And I'm also proudly a Last Mile Fund recipient. And this is quite an important topic. So looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you so much, Ruthe and Aburva, for being here. Last Mile Education Fund has such an interesting model, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you more about it and sharing this with our listeners. Let's start with some questions for Aburva. Aburva, can you share your academic path and what sparked your interest in semiconductors or related fields?
Yes. So my academic path, aka college. So I started off with a degree in engineering technology where I focused on computer networks and electronics. And during that program, I really enjoyed understanding how hardware systems communicate and how electronic components come together to power modern technology. And that exposure naturally led me to become curious about the foundational layer behind all electronics, which is semiconductors. So, as I learned more about how chips are designed and manufactured, I realized how critical the semiconductor industry and ecosystem is to everything from computer devices to, just innovation in general. So that curiosity eventually led me to pursue opportunities in the semiconductor equipment manufacturing industry, where I could see firsthand how technology that powers the world actually gets built.
Aburva, what kind of challenges did you encounter as you pursued your degree, and how did Last Mile support you while you were finishing up college?
Yeah, so during college, I was pretty independent financially, and I relied on multiple scholarships to support my tuition and stay on track towards graduation. And so for most of my academic journey, that system worked very well. However, during my final semester, one of my scholarship disbursements was delayed. So, as in, if I were to get scholarship in February of 2024, it got delayed and the disbursement was scheduled for April 2024. But even though all of this was internal, there was some sort of issue with the tuition department. So, which would have kind of created a situation where I might not have been able to graduate on time. even though I'd completed the academic requirements. So at that moment, timing was especially critical because I was actively receiving job offers from the industry, and a delay in graduating could have significantly impacted my career trajectory. So that's when Last Mile Fund stepped in, and their support helped bridge that gap so I could finish my degree without any interruption. And because of that support, I was able to graduate with honors and start my career in the semiconductor industry right on schedule.
That's so amazing, that you were kind of in your last semester, you were relying on these scholarships, you had, offers, you were thinking about where you wanted to go professionally, and then, due to something that was completely outside of your control, this was all potentially gonna be a major train wreck, and then Last Mile was able to step in. That's incredible. Why do you think it's important for students like yourself to have opportunities in the semiconductor space and advanced technology fields in general, Aburva?
That's a great question. Semiconductors itself is like at the very heart of almost every technology that we use today, be it smartphones or AI systems to healthcare devices and transportation. So, because of that, the industry needs a strong and diverse pipeline of talent. For many students, especially those who are supporting themselves through college, small financial barriers at the wrong time can derail years of efforts. So, programs like these that provide support at critical moments to help ensure that capable students can finish their education and contribute their skills to industries that really need them. So, when students from different backgrounds enter fields like semiconductors and advanced manufacturing, it also strengthens the industry by bringing in new perspective, resilience, and also problem solving approaches. So I do think it is of utmost importance that students like myself have the opportunity in all of these technical fields, and there's only positive things that come out of this.
As someone who works in the semiconductor industry, it's always great to feel the passion that people discover when they get into the technology and the industry. And as a patent attorney, same as Elizabeth, somewhat selfishly, I'm curious, how do you see your future career intersecting with innovation or other intellectual property issues going forward?
Again, a great question. I actually do think about this a lot. So earlier in my career, I worked in the semiconductor equipment manufacturing industry, and that gave me a very deep appreciation for how much research, engineering precision, and proprietary knowledge goes into building the technologies that power modern electronics. So, more recently, I transitioned into working at an enterprise storage and data management company. And that shift has broadened my perspective. And now that I'm seeing another side of technology ecosystem, how the massive amounts of data generated by modern systems are stored, protected, and managed. And what connects both of these experiences from my perspective is the importance of innovation and intellectual property itself. Whether it's semiconductor manufacturing processes or advanced data infrastructure, companies invest heavily in developing technologies that push the industry forward. So protecting those innovations ensure that organizations can continue investing in research and building, next generation of solutions. So as my career grows, I'm very excited to be at the intersection of these fields, supporting technology that both enables innovation, but also safeguards the knowledge and data that powers it.
Thank you, Barbara. That was a great explanation of where you've come from, and where you see yourself now. What message would you like to send industry leaders who are listening, especially those that might be concerned about sustaining talent and protecting IP in the United States?
Yeah, thanks for the question. My message would be that talent exists everywhere and anywhere, but sometimes students just need a little amount of support at the right moment to stay on their path. So programs like Last Mile Fund makes a true difference because they prevent talented students from falling through the cracks due to temporary financial barriers. So when those students graduate and enter industries like semiconductors, they become a part of a workforce that drives innovation, manufacturing, and IP development, not only in the US, but like literally everywhere in the world. So investing in students today is really an investment in the future strength and competitiveness of the technology ecosystem, which is constantly evolving. So I do think it's very important that we encourage and support students right now more than ever with AI coming into play as well. So yeah, that's going to be my message to the industry leaders, that there's some great talent out here.
Thanks, Aburva. Ruth, turning to you. Elizabeth and I have had past episodes where we've talked about some of the pressures on the semiconductor industry. And as we were talking earlier, the semiconductor industry is facing a workforce shortage and then also an increasingly competitive IP landscape. How does the Last Mile Education Fund address these challenges through supporting students?
Sure. I have a lot of things to say about this, lots of opinions on it. One, I think we can all agree that IP is talent and talent is IP, and the way we get innovation is talent. And investing in that talent is really critical. What's unique for the semiconductor industry is that they're competing for talent, not just within the industry itself, but across multiple other industries. And so when students are asked, who do you think are the top tech employers, they simply name employers they've heard of, like Netflix and Google and Amazon, because those are consumer facing brands that have been in their lives since childhood. So as a semiconductor company, you not only have to attract talent from, a competitive landscape in computer science and engineering, but you also have to like lure them away when you don't have brand identity. And what we've learned at Last Mile Education Fund is that low income talent, or what we call financially vulnerable students, are the largest untapped pool of talent in tech, period. There's 13,800 estimated students we're losing annually in junior and senior year in computer science and engineering. So our theory of change is like, let's scoop up all of that talent and get them over the finish line and into jobs. And the way that this benefits corporate partners is that you get to build a relationship with students like Aburva before they graduate, when they're still making those critical decisions. And so one of the things I like to say is, what's going to impress a student more, the fact that you gave them a hoodie or a water bottle at a career fair, or the fact that you paid their rent their senior year of college? And so it's an employer brand building opportunity that is really unparalleled.
Ruth, in terms of those students that you're trying to reach, what kind of unique barriers do low income or underrepresented students face that would prevent them from completing degrees in fields that are critical to the semiconductor industry?
Yeah, this is a big, complicated answer, but the higher education system of the United States was built essentially as a finishing school for the children of the elite back in the 1800s. And that was at a time, pre-industrial revolution, when we, were educating those who already owned farms and land. And then we had the Industrial Revolution, and we needed a handful of people to manage a lot of workers. Well, today we need a lot of highly educated people. And we have a system that was built for filtering people out, not filtering people in. So the way that higher education financing often works is it's very front loaded on getting students into college. And that kind of assumes that you're going to be fine as you get through. So the amount of resources available to help students finish college or get out of college is very limited. And so I like to joke that Last Mile is about getting students out of college, not in. And so we come in at a time when they've proven themselves, they're a junior or a senior, they've made it halfway through that degree. So really there's too many sunk costs for us to let them fail at this stage. And we solve whatever the problem is. We have paid for car repairs, we have paid for dental work. Sometimes it's tuition, like in Aburva's case, it was just an administrative error on the part of her institution that was causing this problem. But as you probably know, a lot of institutions are pretty inflexible about rules, and you're sometimes a cog in a giant machine. So we basically trust the students, and they tell us they need help. We say yes, and we give them the money to do it however they need to do it. I will say we have funded cremations. If you happen to be the oldest child in your family and a parent passes away and you've got to come up with money for that funeral, you just do. And that shouldn't derail your entire journey of becoming an engineer. We've calculated that for one of these students that we get over the finish line, they're going to earn well over, I think it's 2.7 million over their lifetime, more money. But more importantly, they're going to contribute to innovation for their entire career. And that could have been derailed, over the cost of a set of new tires.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I mean, just thinking of these students that, it's having had students now that are working on getting into college, which is a whole, effort in and of itself, even if you don't have financial issues. And then, engineering school is so hard, as I recall myself going through it, right? Getting to the point where then if there's a financial hurdle that, would cause you to drop out, I mean, it's just tragic. So I think you guys are doing amazing work, Ruth. I'm gonna move the question here away so much from the deserving students and into kind of the industry. So because I think there's some benefits there too. Like, how do you see the connection between investing in students and protecting U.S. leadership in the semiconductor space, and specifically in intellectual property and in semiconductors?
Well, I've had some strong opinions about this. One, I did work in policy in the federal government in the White House back in 2017. So I spent a lot of time, 2016, thinking about the role of the US in innovation and how talent plays a role in that. And, we are really unique as a country in that we have really the best IP protection environment in the world. And most companies want their IP protected here or created here. And we also have one of the best capital landscapes for investment and building companies. And so the third leg of that stool is obviously talent. Talent drives innovation. And with the CHIPS and Science Act and that funding, and really the desire to repatriate chip manufacturing to the United States and the national security concerns, homegrown talent is critical. And it's getting harder and harder to import talent, through H-1B visas and other pathways. So, investing in the home team is really the way that we're going to solve this shortage problem. And the reality is we don't have a talent shortage as much as we have a talent leakage. We're pushing millions and millions of students into the STEM talent pipeline. There has been a concerted STEMspiration campaign for the last 30 years, really, to grow the STEM talent pipeline. Yet we're letting more than half of the students who are low income fall out, and having a 50% success rate on your production is pretty sad, right? You want a much higher success rate than that. And we have found it's really, really simple. If there is a financial safety net, lower income students do just as well or better than their affluent peers, and they're just as successful. So we're seeing an 80% graduation rate on our students. And, just for comparison, the graduation rate nationally for the United States for all students at all income levels is 65%. And for lower income students, it's in the 40s. So we're capturing, basically realizing gains on an investment that's been made for decades. And it just needs that last little bit. I think, our talent is our secret weapon for innovation, 100%.
Ruth, you mentioned growing the home team, which is a great idea in the current industrial market and given everything that's going on globally. One of the things that the semiconductor industry is worried about is talent leakage abroad. How does your work help keep talent in the US innovation ecosystem? So how do you keep the home team at home?
Well, I sadly can't control what they do once they get a job. So I think the key really needs to be that the companies here in the US are providing the right kinds of professional development benefits and intrinsic value to being an employee here in the US. And I have to say, my sister is an in the oil and gas industry, and she got hired by a European owned company, and she is just reeling at the benefits of being an employee of a European company and just the difference in approach. And so I do, I recognize everything is a little crazy right now, and AI is disrupting everything, and there's a lot of sort of confusion in general. But the bottom line is innovation comes from talent. And we have a tremendous amount of untapped talent in the US. We're not even scratching the surface. The other thing that I think a lot of people don't recognize is we have a global competitive advantage that we're really not leveraging. The United States is pretty much the largest first world country that has a native diverse population at scale. We have people from Hispanic backgrounds, we have people from Asian backgrounds, from like all walks of life right here that are Americans. And so if we were leveraging all the talent that was available, we can compete in ways that other countries that are more homogenous can't. And I think that that is something we really need to lean into.
Oh, yeah, that's a really interesting concept that I don't think I've ever heard anyone articulate before. How fascinating. So, Ruth, what do you see? What role should industry and policymakers play in supporting organizations like Last Mile that are strengthening the pipeline for future innovation?
So, what's really interesting about our model is how we're different from, say, a government funded emergency fund, right? So, during COVID, the CARES Act essentially forced every university in the country to have emergency funds available. They were quite uneven in how they were deployed, unfortunately. And so I heard from students that they're like, yeah, my school's fund gave me $20. I'm like, well, you spent $100 to process $20. That's ridiculous. So I think the ways that companies bring value to this equation is that we're tying that emergency investment to a industry and a job. And so making the direct connection between these completion funds and a job pathway. So what I'm looking for from corporations, obviously we give away money, so we love money. We need money. Rich kids graduate, poor kids don't. Money is the solution. Super easy answer. So we want investment from companies, but we also want hiring relationships and partnerships with talent acquisition teams, because the opportunity in that last 6 to 18 months to build relationships with students and show them that there are pathways for them into companies that have stepped up to express their interest in incubating this talent. The other thing that I think I would love to see companies doing is breaking out of this tendency to just, do the same thing over and over. We recruit from the same 10 schools, or we recruit from where we've hired from in the past. Talent is literally everywhere. And that's one of the things that Last Mile brings to the table. If you look at our impact map, we have students at 1,100 institutions all over the country in every possible zip code. And so being able to see beyond your 10 target school, no talent acquisition team can recruit at 1,100 institutions, but we have a foothold into 1,100 engineering and computer science departments across the US. And so partnering to make sure that talent from every type of institution and background is having exposure to, the companies and the opportunities that are often, we often get like 10 companies all fighting over students at the same 10 institutions, which just is not, as comprehensive of a strategy as it could be.
Ruth, can you tell us a little bit more specifically about the Semiconductor Pathways Fund that you recently launched? That seems especially relevant for this industry.
Yeah, so the Semiconductor Pathways Fund has a pretty incredible history in that we started partnering initially with Applied Materials a number of years ago because they recognized that there was work to be done around talent that they wanted to be part of. And they really took a big leap. A lot of companies were like, well, we're just going to fund a scholarship. And what's different about Last Mile than a scholarship is scholarships are about being selective and sort of weeding out, whereas Last Mile's premise is we're going to invest in every possible student as if we were VCs and hope that, a percentage of them are going to succeed. Well, 80% are succeeding, so we're doing better than the VC sector. But we are investing with abundance, and capturing, talent in that last moment, that critical moment. And so what's been really exciting is that the success of what was called, or what is called, the Momentum Fund for Women in Technology, that was launched by Applied Materials, was so successful that Applied Materials was like, we couldn't possibly fund all the needs of the entire industry, so let's get our partners and competitors and customers to the table. So this was turned around very fast. It was June of last year that we reached out to all the other companies and said, we're gonna do this thing, do you want to be part of it? And we announced it actually at Semicon West last October 2025. And so we have raised millions of dollars across 5 different companies who are collectively putting money into the bucket, and that is going to fund 6,700 more graduates over the next 3 years. And we haven't met our full fundraise goal, so we are still looking for corporate partners. But what you get as being part of the Semiconductor Fund is you're able to sort of do a collective impact investment into the talent for your industry. And then you get direct access to the students that are funded through that fund for recruiting and engagement and all kinds of other things. So we're going to be doing a few sort of semiconductor 101 conversations with some of the students coming up soon that all of the companies are participating in. And there's lots of ways to engage in that community. And so we spend a lot of time as an organization incubating and staying in touch with the students we've funded, and through the Semiconductor Pathways Fund, our corporate partners get to be even deeper into that conversation with the students that they are supporting.
Well, Ruth, Aburva, this was a very thought-provoking episode. I know I'm very excited for all the good work that your organization is doing, and to see and hear the benefits firsthand from Aburva was wonderful. Thank you both for joining today's episode, and we wish you absolutely the best of luck going forward.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. This was a great discussion.
So great to hear from you guys. This was wonderful. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Semi Interesting Podcast. You can find more episodes wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube.
And if you enjoyed the episode, we always appreciate 5-star reviews. While we talked about legal issues, none of the information shared during this podcast is intended to be legal advice. If you have any questions about information we cover or ideas for a future episode, feel free to contact me or the other attorneys at Hodgson Russ. You can find contact information at www.hodgsonruss.com.